What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gage. Welcome to the channel. Today, I am excited to be showing off my version of the Rockets Zapdos deck from all the way back in the WOTC-20 era of the Pokemon trading card game. WOTC standing for Wizards of the Coast, so essentially all of the sets that were developed by Wizards of the Coast when they were still handling the Pokemon trading card game. So I believe that's all the way up to Skyridge format, and the 20s representing the number of trainer cards that you can play in the deck. This is essentially a fan-made format that is designed to make it so that playing vintage Pokemon is a bit more balanced. Originally, the Pokemon trading card game back in the day really devolved into just playing as many of the most busted trainers that we had at our disposal, as well as the most efficient Pokemon, making it so that it wasn't a very balanced format. So, in my opinion, WOTC-20 is a very good way of being able to play that older format, but in a much more balanced way, because it puts much more emphasis on the Pokemon themselves, which in my opinion is the way that the Pokemon trading card game should be played. So I'm excited to go over this, but before I do, I did want to just shout out going and checking out Shuckle TCG that has a great breakdown of the format, as well as Papa Jumpluff that has gameplay as well as deck profiles if you're at all interested in the format. And of course, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you're fans of content like this. So without further ado, let's hop into it. So by far, my favorite legendary bird is Zapdos, and we have to play 4 copies of Rocket Zapdos from the Team Rocket set. This variant of the card is actually a reprint from the Celebration set, making it much more affordable for you to be able to play this deck on a budget if you were interested in actually playing. Rocket Zapdos is a solid attacker that has the Plasma attack, where if there are any electric energy in the discard pile, you can attach it to your Rocket Zapdos, so loading up your Zapdos even faster and doing 20 damage at the same time. The payoff being the Electro Burn attack, which for 3 lightning and a colorless allows you to do 70 damage, as well as you do end up taking 10 damage for the number of electric energy attached to the Rocket Zapdos, which the 70 damage is able to, at the bare minimum, one-shot a lot of things, or at least put your opponent's Pokemon into 2-shot range, which is absolutely nothing to scoff at. On the lower end, if you end up using just 3 lightning energies and maybe a warp energy to power it up, then you're only taking 30 damage, which the cost output very much outweighs the damage that you end up taking back from this. And if you do end up having just 4 lightning on it, then that just means you're taking 40 damage, which is less than ideal, but still makes up for the fact that you are doing so much damage. So as you can tell, this is a glass cannon style build because you're hitting hard, but you also don't have a ton of HP yourself. So a lot of the time you want to bide your time. It's a slower format anyway, so I'll have Rocket Zapdos just kind of chilling on the bench, slowly whittling and doing some damage to my opponent's threats and loading up as much energy as possible so that I can eventually just swap it out into the active and start doing a large amount of damage. Having it in the active obviously isn't the worst, because Plasma will allow you to load up energy onto it anyway, but you really don't want to be taking chip damage, because then if you do go to use the Electro Burn, you could end up just killing yourself, which strategically there may be instances in which you do want to go for a kamikaze if you are removing your opponent's big threat. So using Rocket Zapdos, like I said, is very glass cannon. You have to know when to be able to actually, have it out in the active versus having just loading it up onto the bench. And that is why I am choosing to play 4 copies, because at the end of the day, you want to see it as quickly as possible so you can start loading it up as quickly as possible. And I am playing a base set classic in 4 copies of Electabuzz, just a very solid an efficient attacker for 1 energy, doing 10 damage, and then on a coin flip, if heads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. This is great for being able to stall, biding your time to allow you to load up your Rocket Zapdos. So making it so that your opponent is paralyzed is very good at basically making the game in more of your pace. And the Thunder Punch for an electric and colorless does 30 damage, and on a coin flip does 10 more damage, so potentially 40, and if tails, it does 10 damage to yourself. no matter what, you're doing 30 damage anyway. And yeah, it is just a very simple Pokemon. It's crazy to think because there are many Pokemon, especially electric Pokemon, that have dropped since the base set. All the way up to Skyridge, and yet Electabuzz still ends up being just a very solid card all around, and so that is why I'm playing 4 copies. And for my own personal tech, I am choosing to play 2 copies of the promo Eevee, as well as 2 copies of Dark Jolteon. Eevee having the chain reaction ability that says that this power can only be used when a Pokemon evolves, and that involves your opponent's Pokemon as well. So if your opponent evolves, it does trigger the chain reaction, and essentially it just says you could search the deck for a card that evolves from Eevee and attach it to the Eevee. That is absurd. Eevee's easily one of the most busted cards in the format because, yeah, there are many decks that evolve, and you know, obviously you could trigger it if you are evolving on your end, which you are playing another evolving Pokemon with Noctowl. But if your opponent evolves, you just trigger Chain Reaction and get yourself a free Dark Jolteon. And Dark Jolteon is just, this is my favorite evolution, so I had to find a way to be able to play it in the deck. Might not be the best option for sure, but in my opinion, has actually worked out because of the fact that it has a very efficient attack in Lightning Flash, which for 1 energy, makes it so that if the defending Pokemon tries to attack, during the next turn, your opponent has to flip a coin, and if tails, their attack essentially does nothing, which makes your Dark Jolteon into a pseudo baby Pokemon, which is wild. Again, you really just want to make it so that you are stalling as much time with your Pokemon so that you can load up your Rocket Zapdos safely, and Dark Jolteon is just a great way to be able to get in some chip damage and also stall for time. It does have Thunder Attack, which for 3 energy on a coin flip. If heads, the defending Pokemon is paralyzed, and if tails, Dark Jolteon does 10 damage to itself, which is less than ideal. A lot of the times I just find myself, you know, you want to load more energy onto your Rocket Zapdos for sure, but a lot of the time I end up using Lightning Flash most of the time, but Thunder Attack is also great in a pinch if you do need to do so, but it is kind of dangerous because of the fact that Dark Jolteon only has 50 HP. A lot of the Dark Pokemon do tend to have some lower HP in general, so I like the 2 copies of Eevee with the Dark Jolteon. Jolteon's just my favorite Pokemon, so, you know, I wanted to make sure I threw it in the deck. And then I am playing 3 copies of Noctowl, as well as 3 copies of Hoot Hoot, and these are just solid Pokemon. Hoot Hoot himself is great at stalling. In a pinch, you just attach an energy, and the defending Pokemon is now asleep, so it's colorless, so you just attach a lightning energy, for example, and cool, now you're able to put your opponent's Pokemon to sleep, which is just very annoying to deal with. They're going to have to, you know, find a way to retreat in order to heal its status condition, or play, you know, a trainer to be able to heal off its status conditions, which are few and far between, especially since with the fact that you can only play up to 20 trainer cards makes it so that a lot of people aren't wasting a slot on things that can cure status conditions. So yeah, who a lot of the time is going to be able to get in for the, you know, being able to put your opponent's Pokemon to sleep, and there's not really much that they can do about it, aside from, you know, just kind of getting lucky and hoping that they have the ability to, you know, swap out or, you know, something of that nature. But we're really playing it for the Noctowl's ability, Glaring Gaze, which once during the turn before you attack, of course, you flip a coin. If heads, you can look at your opponent's hand, and if they have any trainers, you choose one of them and shuffle it into the deck, which is absurd because it does stack. So if you do have multiple Noctowl on the field, you could use one. If you hit heads, you're ripping up your opponent's trainer and shuffling it back into the deck, and you could do it a second time or even a third time if you just so happen to have all 3 of them set up, which a lot of the time you really just have want to have like 1 or 2 set up. I found that having too many on the bench can really clog bench space, and we really want to save some of those spots for, of course, our Zapdos and our Electabuzz, which are the true attackers of the deck. Wing Attack comes up very infrequently, which for 3 energy does 30 damage. A lot of the time, we just want this to sit on the bench and use its Glaring Gaze ability. And yeah, it's great because of the fact that it also has free retreat, so even if your opponent, you know, tries to boss it out, if they don't end up killing it, you just get to retreat it back and, you know, just have it chill on your bench anyway. So yeah, like I mentioned, the fact that you are not only able to take your opponent's trainer, but also, and shuffle it back into the deck, you also get hand knowledge, which in this format is very, very powerful. It means that you can know what your opponent's strategy is. You can see some of the text that they have at their disposal. You can even see if whether or not they have a good or a bad hand, which will make it so that now that you're informed, if whether or not they can actually, make a push, that hand knowledge is valuable in being able to know when to be able to start actually going in and doing damage. So I like the 3/3 line of the Hoot Hoot and Noctowl. I found that it is very nice. I see it when I need to, but I don't necessarily need to see it all the time. And of course, we are playing 4 copies of Cleffa. In my opinion, it is a mandatory 4 of. It is just one of the best ways at being able to insulate yourself from disruption, because its Eek lets you shuffle your hand into the deck and draw 7 cards, which, again, very good. If you, a lot of the time, you just want to use as many cards from your hand as possible, and then you could go ahead and just shuffle whatever you had back, or just straight up draw 7. And it has the baby rule, so your opponent does have to flip a coin if they want to be able to do damage to your Cleffa, making it so that, a 50-50 chance of being able to knock out the Cleffa is great at just stalling out if needed. So 4 copies of Cleffa. I've seen as low as 3, and I'm sure you can get away with it, but I really want to see it as soon as possible and really be able to have access to it. Of course, if I end up seeing more than needed, you could just end up discarding it, using it as discard fodder or something of that nature. But this is easily the strongest staple in the format, and so you do have to play 4, in my opinion. And for the trainers, I am choosing to play 4 copies of Computer Search. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player. We love being able to have as much consistency as possible, and a card that says that you could search straight up, just search for any card in the deck, is absurd. What's really great about Computer Search in this build in particular is the fact that because you have to discard 2 cards, you can safely discard things like your energy and know that you could just end up attaching it later on using your Rocket Zapdos Plasma ability, which is very nice. The synergy there is very strong because you really don't mind discarding your energy because you have Rocket Zapdos. So yeah, for Computer Search, being able to search for anything is busted. I am playing 2 copies of Professor Oak, just a very solid draw card in the deck. Though it says supporter, this is because it's a reprint, but we are playing using the base set version of this, meaning that this is not a supporter, so you can theoretically use multiple in one turn. But because this is an older, grindier format in which being able to run out of cards and decking out is a very real possibility, you don't really want to run too many of it. So I found that 2 is the sweet spot for sure. And you really just want to churn through as much of your deck as possible so that you can get your Rocket Zapdos set up and just start attacking into your opponent for large amounts of damage. So 2 copies of Oak helps you to do so. I'm also playing 2 copies of Plus Power. Just being able to get extra damage onto your opponent's Pokemon can end up being the difference maker in a lot of matchups. So I found that because this is an aggressive build, you really want to maximize on options for being able to increase your damage output, and Plus Power is a solid way of doing so. I'm playing 2 copies of Gust of Wind. You really want to be able to make sure that, you can get, if there are moments where your opponent is sitting on a Cleffa, you could just get it out of the active spot so you don't have to worry about going for the 50-50. Or if you've already weakened something that your opponent is hiding in the bench, of course, you could just gust it out, not have to worry about it. There are many times in which I want to be able to see even more than this, but we are playing Item Finder, which can help to grab it from the discard anyway, so 2 is fine for now. But yeah, if you're playing against like degenerate strategies, which, are just, fully based on stall or anything like that, then yeah, maybe you would be interested in seeing even more than this, but I found that 2 has worked fine just so, for me at least. I'm also playing 2 copies of Energy Removal. Being able to just straight up remove an energy from any of your opponent's Pokemon sets your opponent back a turn, because unless you're playing cards that allow you to cheat energy into play, which is few and far between, because of the fact that you can only attach 1 energy per turn, makes it so that Energy Removal is great at shifting the momentum of the game in your favor, since essentially you're setting your opponent back an entire turn for an energy attachment. So Energy Removal is strong in this format for sure. And then I'm playing the Rocket's Trap, which is just an absolutely busted card. You can flip a coin if heads, choose up to 3 cards at random from your opponent's hand, and shuffle them into the deck, which, if you are able to hit heads, essentially makes it so that you are that much more likely to win the game because you are removing card advantage from your opponent. You might be able to snipe some of their key cards that they really needed in order for them to be able to play. So the Rocket's Trap, I'm only playing the one because, again, it is it is risky being at a coin flip, but it is so fun if you are able to get it off. I'm also playing 4 copies of Rocket Sneak Attack, which is, again, an absurd trainer, being able to look at your opponent's hand. If he or she has any trainers, you choose one of them and then shuffle it into the deck. So it's basically a guaranteed Noctowl, which is absurd. Again, we've already discussed how looking at your opponent's hand is just so valuable in this format, and then setting your opponent back one of their trainers, key trainers for that matter, is going to end up being a difference maker in a lot of matchups. So 4 of the Rocket Sneak Attack is ideal. As I alluded to earlier, we are playing the item finder. You discard 2 cards from the hand to put a trainer from the discard pile into your hand. It's a grindier format. A lot of the times you are going to end up discarding things that maybe you're interested in using later down the line, and item finder is great at being able to recur those resources. I'm playing 1 copy of Town Volunteers. Take 5 basically any Pokemon and or basic energy cards from the discard pile, and then you get to show them to your opponent and shuffle them into the deck. So again, sometimes you get into the late game, you end up discarding a lot of resources, or maybe some of your opponents, some of your Pokemon died early. You can just go ahead, shuffle them back into the deck to use later on. And I am playing 1 Copycat. This is just so that if my opponent does end up eking, you can go ahead and get yourself essentially a full hand as well, because you shuffle your hand into the deck, count the number of cards your opponent has in their hand, and then you get to draw that many cards. So when they eke, their turn ends, so you can guarantee that they will have 7 cards in their hand, and since Cleffa is a staple in the format, a lot of the times you are going to be able to get the maximum value from that draw, and Copycat is just a solid card to be able to, say, you know what, let me shuffle my hand away and get a fresh set of cards. And that is essentially it for all of the trainers, because the rest of the deck is jammed to the brim with electric energy and 2 copies of warp energy, which is a great special energy that allows you to essentially attach it to your active Pokemon, and then you get to switch that Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon, so allowing you to be able to pivot in a pinch. So yeah, I feel as though the deck, you really want to be able to see as many of your electric energies as possible, so that if you do end up discarding some of them early on, it's not that big of a deal, because you can always attach it later on with the Zapdos. So guys, that is it for the deck profile. Thank you so much for sticking around to check out this older format of Pokemon. It certainly brings me back to a nostalgic time in the trading card game. I grew up playing during this era, and so being able to play a format that feels definitely a lot more balanced than how it used to be is very fun and nostalgic for me. So yeah, I would definitely highly recommend checking out other channels that talk about WOTC-20 content. I would love for this community to continue to grow and thrive. There are so many fun strategies during that era that are I believe, underutilized, and I would be interested to see some other strategies being played in the WOTC-20 format. So guys, thank you again so much for your time, and until next time, GG.